Hello everyone, my name is Joe Austin and this is Potentials Unleashed. Today we're going to make a program called Magic 8 Ball. So let's get going. First off, we're going to open up the B4J IDE and make File, New. I'm going to go down to UI for User Interface and we're going to give it a name, Magic 8 Ball. And I already have a Magic 8 Ball program, so I'm going to put a 2 at the end of this, but you don't have to. You can name it whatever you want. Click OK, and it gives you a default program here, which is actually a Hello World example program. So we can actually run this as is right out of the box, let it compile using Java. You get your one button, click it, you get a pop-up that says Hello World. Done. That was easy. All right, but what we're going to do here is a Magic 8 Ball. So to start off, we're going to get rid of the button 1 because we're actually going to rename the button. And I suppose we could just rename this subroutine here, but instead I'm just going to delete it this time, and I'm going to delete the reference to the button 1 as well. We'll get rid of that, and this is your basic program. And so to begin, we're going to go into the layout, and you can change the name of this if you'd like, but it is layout 1 by default. So you can either hold your control key down, and this becomes a link, and you can click and it will bring up the designer, or you can go to the designer and choose Open Internal Designer. So we'll do that, and you'll notice it also automatically pops up the actual window, but this is the designer window or live view of the designer window. This is what your user is going to see. It is actually not functional, so you can click on this all day long and I'll get nothing, but you'll see it does say WYSIWYG designer, and once more, WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. So this is a perfect example of that, because what you're seeing here is actually what shows up when you run the program. So we do want to change this a little bit. I'm actually going to move this button down a tad, like that, and you can see it moved down over here too. So this is live. And just so you're aware, if you accidentally close this window and you want to get it back again, there's a couple different ways to do it. Go to WYSIWYG Designer, hit Connect, press the F2 shortcut key, or if you come down here to the bottom status bar, it says WYSIWYG status disconnected. But if you click on the word disconnected, it actually brings it back up again. A little wobble there on the button is kind of cool. So we'll move this out of the way just so we continue to see it while we make changes. All right, so we already have our button here, so we don't have to add another button because this is all we actually need is one. But we are going to change its name because if you remember, button 1_click was the subroutine name that we deleted. So we're going to give this a different name. And for naming conventions, meaning the way you name different objects, to keep it conforming with anybody else who might be programming along with you, usually put some sort of a beginning extension or prefix on each object to identify what type of object it is. So for a button, we're going to use a 3-letter code BTN, short for button. So BTN, and then what you actually want to name the button. And in this case, this is the button that you click on to ask the question of the Magic 8 Ball. So we're just going to call it BTN Ask. If we hit enter, you'll notice that the event name also changes to BTN Ask. So this is the event name that we're going to reference whenever somebody clicks that button. So the only other thing we have to do is, you can see it still says click me over here, even though it now says BTN Ask on the actual button. So this is the button name, but this is the text that's going to show up on that name. So if we click on this, it's going to, and scroll down to the text field, text, we actually want this to say ask. Hit enter, and there you go, you got ask. Now if you want to make this, the text on this a little bit bigger, you can, and maybe make it bold so it's nice and clear what you're doing here. And that's, as far as the ask button goes, that's really all you have to do. So now if you click off the button and you basically have no object chosen, it's going to show you the main properties for the window itself. So the actual window itself, this whole thing here. So right now the title in the window is just form, because that's the default. So and here it is here, form title is form. Now this is a Magic 8 Ball program, so we're going to do Magic 8 Ball, and as soon as you hit enter, you notice it updates the actual form itself. So now in the title bar, it's going to say Magic 8 Ball. It won't say WYSIWYG Designer because That's not actually part of the program. This is just the display for this layout, for the designer. All right, so let's add some additional stuff. So if we're going to add view, I'm going to add a label and do labels up here, alphabetical order. Put this up at the top. Actually move this over a little bit so you can see it. So that's a little control feature here, and you can zoom in and out with this baby here. Actually, you can use your mouse wheel as well. All right, so let's do this. We're going to expand this a little bit. We're going to bring that out to the end of the form. And let's bring this in a little bit. We don't need that to be so big. That like that. Yeah. So, get it even on either side if you want to. That's fine. Then we have to give it a name now. So we're actually not going to control-wise, programming-wise, we're not actually going to be touching this control. It's just for a display. So we don't have to name it, but I'm going to just because I like to name every object I have so that if I do happen to pull it up in code, I know what it's for. So for label, we want to start the 3-character code in the beginning as LBL, and that's short for label. And this is just going to be like another title. It's not necessary, but I like to do it just because. All right, so the event name is the same, LBL title, doesn't matter. We're not going to reference it in code at all. We are going to change the text, though, to magic 8 ball. Hit enter, and now you can see it updates there right away. But we are going to want to make this bigger because this is really just, let's make it 48. That's nice and big. How about bold? Beautiful. All right, so now it's very obvious what we have here. Now I'm going to add a text field, not a text area, but a text field. And we'll line that up with the ask button because this is where we're actually going to ask our question. To be a perfectionist, I like to line it up with everything else here. So we'll click on that, we'll give it a name, and for text fields or text areas, I like to use the txt prefix. And this is where we're going to actually ask the question. So let's just make this one question, txt question. Hit enter, the event name also becomes txt question, and we don't want any text in this field because this is where we're going to type our own text. But you do notice over here that it says prompt. As soon as you click on it, it goes away. Okay, so click off of it and prompt shows up again. So this is where we can put some text in there that it isn't actually in the text box. It's just kind of displaying to help people know what it is that they need to put in that text field. So if you look over here in the properties, we have text properties, prompt. It says prompt by default. So if we get rid of that, what do we want them to do when they get to this field? We want them to ask a yes or no question. Hit enter, and there you go. Ask a yes or no question. So now they know what to do when they're in that field. All right, so now we have the ask button, and we have the question that we're going to ask, but now we need the actual 8-ball. So let's add that. And there's a few different ways to do this. You can create what's called a canvas right here, where you can do some draw option. You can draw lines and circles and things of that nature. But that's a little over the top for what we need for this one. So I'm actually just going to add a new label, and you'll understand why in a moment. And let's make this, let's see, how wide is this? This is, width is 540, so we'll make the height 540 as well. So we got a nice big box here. You know what, let's go 600 by 600. So that makes this display a little bit bigger, but that's okay because this is not where, this outline here is not where the dimensions of the actual window are going to be. It defaults to 600 by 600. We're actually going to make this 800 by 800. So just for the sake of making it look good in the designer, let's go to new variant, change the width to 800 and the height to 800, hit enter, and now you can see it's much bigger and it fits better. And we can actually take these two, kind of line it up, that baby. All right, and it doesn't actually update the live view. It still says 600 by 600 here, but that's okay because it's, again, we're going to change this in our code. So it's actually going to show up as 800 by 800, even though in the designer it's only showing up as 600 by 600. All right, so let's take this label, and again, we'll give it the prefix LBL for label, and then we're going to do magic 8 ball. We're never going to reference this in code. You can call it whatever you want. I just like to do that so that I know what it is when I'm looking through the code. I know whether I should choose it or shouldn't choose it based on what pops up when I start typing in the code. You'll see what I mean as we go along. So there's no text in this one whatsoever, so we'll get rid of that. And what is a magic 8 ball if it's not a ball? So here's what we can do here. So if we go back up in the border, let's just give this a border so you can see it over here. And you know what, let's make this a little bit bigger too. A tad bigger, and it's a little too big, but oh, there we go. All right, so this is going to cut off a little bit. That's okay. So now we did a border just so we can see the actual border itself, but now we want to do a corner radius. We just kind of click on this up arrow and just leave it there for a few seconds. So it's going to pop up to like whatever. If you notice, the corner is actually getting rounder. Now what we can do is, and I don't know that we have to put it up this high, but if we put it at 360 and hit enter, voila, we have a circle. Now in the designer itself, it's not a circle because it's still just a square label, but on the user window that shows up, it's actually circular. And we also want to change the background color of the, oh, that's up here. So right now it's set to no color at all. So if we click on that arrow there, and we can choose black by dragging it way down like there, and it actually shows up as black here. But if we tap on this, there's a bunch of different colors we can choose, black being one of them. Either way is fine. And click off of it, and now you have a black ball. All right, so in addition to that, we also need to, and let's go back to the views tree so we can see our actual objects. And you can click on any one of these and it'll actually select that particular object over in the designer. Doesn't really matter. So we're going to actually add another label that you don't need to type in it, but it does need to display some text because this is where the answers to the questions are going to show up. So let's click on Add View, and we're going to go down to Label once again, and drag this over the larger box, make it a bit bigger. Wind up, okay. Oh, trying to be a perfectionist. That looks good. So click on this again. Now we are going to be able to reference this in our code, so let's give it a name that we'll recognize when we start typing the code. So again, LBL because it is a label. And now this is where the answer will be. So hit enter there. And there's our answers. Okay, so we want to make, you can see the word text in there. We want to make it stick out a little bit more. So let's give it a kind of a grayish color. And to do gray on all these colors, the red, green, and blue, if we give them all the same value, then the resulting color will be gray of some sort. So if the higher the number, the lighter the color, the lower the number, the darker the color. So let's just do 50, 50, and 50, and you can see there's a nice dark gray color there. And I think that should be okay, because what we'll do is the text that we put in it, it will make it white or something so it stands out. So, but for now, we don't want any text in it. So we'll clear that out. And okay, now we want to mess with the corner radius again. And this time, well, we also want to make this one 360, give it that nice oval shape. And as you can see, it is kind of big, so maybe we want to make this a little smaller. Match it up. Oh, match it up on this side. Right. Not quite. Let's in again. That's a little better. Maybe bring it down a tad. What do we think? That looks pretty decent. So, all right. So on an actual Magic 8 Ball, this area here, the gray area inside the magic 8 ball is usually a circle. But because we're going to be printing text on here, which we want to be pretty visible, we're going to leave it as an oval. And that should do the trick. All right, so what else do we want to do? So in the text, we want to make the text color. We're actually going to change that to, we can do another gray, or we can do a white. Actually, I think if you type in here, white, yeah, it pops right down to white. Or you could just go right up in the upper right corner over here, as you see it is there, and you'll get white. So perfect. So just to test it, it is white. Okay, great, but it is very small, so let's make this a bit bigger. We don't want it too big because we're going to have multiple words here, so we want to make sure all the words fit. But that looks pretty good. I guess we can leave it like that. And it's automatically centered, so we don't have to worry about that either. But now, by default, we don't want anything in the text field. So we'll hit that. All right, so we basically have our screen here. This is all we're going to display. So now we need to give each of our objects that we're actually going to reference in code, we have to give them a definition, I guess you could say. So we multiple ways to do this. We can select them here, select that, hold down your control key. We want to get the text question, and we also want to get the ask button. So these three objects here are the only objects that we need to define so that we can write code to them. So now that they're all selected, right click on it, go down to generate dialog, and you're going to bring up the dialog box for this. You want to click them all. Now this button here, this checkbox here, is where they actually get defined. They'll go into the global section of the code, which we'll see momentarily. Let's see, so label answer, we don't need anything else to happen with that one. We just have to give it a reference. These two, we do want. So that for a button, and I know it's a button because it says BTN, we need to give it a click event. So we'll choose click. And for the text field, we want to give it an action event. And the reason for this is that, let's say you type something in the question box, and then rather than clicking the ask button, you just press enter. You want it to be able to respond to that too, so that's why you would choose the action event for the text field. So once you have everything selected that you want, go ahead and hit generate members, and it looks like nothing happened, but it did. So we'll close this box, go to file, and save the designer, and now we can close it. Automatically, it does not actually close this box. This stays open, but we're gonna close it anyway. All right, so here is the action event for the text field. Here's the click event for the button. And up here we have, it has dimensioned all of this stuff. Now you can see this one's underlined with purple. And if you look over here, it says the variable label answer is never assigned to any value. That's fine. We're going to, so not a problem right now. If this were in red, though, that means that it's an error that would kill the program. So we would have to fix it in that case. But it's just purple, so we'll let it go. All right, so there's some other things that we want to define globally. And by putting things in the global section, that just means that anything you put in here is available to the program, to the entire program, or all the subroutines underneath it. There are you could have multiple modules, like this main is considered a module. You could have multiple modules that handle different parts of your program. Not something we need to get into right now, but this is what we're going to do. So the private keyword here, that is what defines all of the variables that you're going to use, or objects, but private means that only this module, the main module, only this module will be able to access any of them. If we did public, then if you had multiple modules, then those would be available to those modules as well. So it's a good idea to keep things private because you don't want rogue modules changing values of variables and then you not know what happened. So keep it private, and then if you need to later on in another module, if you do need to have access to that variable for some reason, then you can make it public. But I would suggest keeping everything private to begin with.
All right, everyone, that's going to do it for part 1. Hang in for part 2. As always, if you have any questions, comments, please leave them below and I'll answer them as quickly as I possibly can.